There are engines on British roads right now that destroy themselves from the inside, and the people driving them have no idea. An engine where the timing chain sits at the back against the gearbox. To reach it, the gearbox comes out. The bill is often more than the car is worth. Cars needing a liter of oil every 1,000 miles and owners being told that is normal. A diesel that snaps its crankshaft, not wears it, snaps it. Engines that give you one warning, a rattle on a cold morning that lasts 3 seconds and then disappears. Miss it, and the next thing you hear is the engine destroying itself. And the worst part is this: almost none of these are exotic cars. These are Fords and Vauxhalls and Peugeot and BMWs. School-run cars, motorway cars, the car on your drive right now. 13 engines, 21 badges. If yours is on this list, you need to know what to listen for, and you need to know tonight. Let us start at 13. One thing before we do, because it explains all 13. Every engine on this list was designed to do the same thing. Make less power go further. Smaller capacity, a turbocharger bolted on, and every part inside working harder than the part it replaced. That is not a conspiracy. It is emissions law. Manufacturers were told to cut carbon dioxide, and shrinking engines was the fastest way to do it. The trouble is that a small engine doing a big engine's job runs hotter, spins faster, and lives closer to its limits. And the parts that used to last the life of the car started not lasting the life of the car. Number 13. The Fiat 1.4 Multi-Air. You will find this in the Fiat 500X and the Punto, in the Alfa Romeo Mito and Giulietta, and in the Jeep Renegade. The clever bit is a unit sitting on top of the engine that controls the inlet valves electronically and hydraulically rather than with a conventional camshaft lobe. When it works, it is genuinely brilliant engineering. When it fails, and they do fail, the engine runs badly, the warning light comes on, and you discover the unit is not a part you repair, it is a part you replace, and it is not cheap. The signs are rough running, a loss of power, and a rattle from the top of the engine. If the car has been on long service intervals or cheap oil, the odds go up considerably because that unit depends entirely on clean oil at the right pressure. Number 12. The BMW N20. This is the 2-Liter turbocharged petrol found in the 320i, the 520i, the X3, and a good many others between about 2011 and 2017. Now, the good news first. Unlike the engine at number 1, this chain sits at the front of the engine, which makes it far cheaper to get at. That difference in position saves a very large amount in labor if things go wrong. The problem was the plastic timing chain guides. They degraded early on a lot of cars, and the warning is a high-pitched whine or whirring from the front of the engine. BMW acknowledged it and extended the warranty, but most of those cars have long since aged out of that cover. So if it happens now, the bill is yours. The main risk period was before 2015. Later builds got metal guides, and the problem largely went away. Number 11. The Volkswagen 1.2 and 1.4 TSI. This is the EA11 family, and it is fitted across Volkswagen, Audi, Seat, and Skoda from the late 2000s onwards. Golf, Polo, A1, A3, IA, Leon, Fabia, Octavia. These are notorious for the timing chain stretching early, often before 60,000 miles, which on a modern engine is nothing at all. The symptom is a rattle on cold start, rough running, and eventually misfires. And if the chain jumps a tooth, the valves and the pistons meet, and you are looking at a new engine rather than a repair. The tensioner is the specific weak point. Early ones could lose pressure when the engine was switched off, which meant the chain was slack on the next cold start, which is exactly the moment it is under most strain. If you own one of these and you have never had the chain done, and it rattles for a second or two when you first turn the key, do not put that down to age. Number 10. The Renault 1.2 TCE Renault Captur Clio Kadjar. And here is the one that catches people out. The Nissan Qashqai, because Renault and Nissan share engines. 3 problems, and they compound. Excessive oil consumption, turbocharger failure, and crankshaft bearing damage, which is the one that ends the engine. They are connected. The engine uses oil. The owner does not check it, because who checks their oil between services anymore? The level drops. The turbo, which relies on a good oil feed, starts to suffer, and the bearings at the bottom of the engine, which need pressure above all else, begin to wear. By the time there is a knocking noise, the crankshaft is already damaged. The single most useful thing you can do with one of these is check the oil once a fortnight. That is it. That one habit is the difference between a car and a scrap value. Number 9. The Mazda 2.2 Skyactiv-D. Mazda 6, Mazda CX-5, and the Mazda 3 of the same era. Now, Mazda has a very good reputation, deservedly, and I want to be fair about that. But this diesel has a specific problem, and it is a problem caused by the emissions equipment rather than the engine itself. Diesels have a particulate filter, and every so often the car burns off what has collected in it. To do that, it injects extra fuel. Some of that fuel gets past the piston rings and ends up in the sump. That is fine if the car then goes for a long run and burns it off. It is not fine if the car does short journeys because the oil level climbs, the oil gets thinner, and thin diesel contaminated oil does not protect the bottom end. The signature is an oil level that rises rather than falls and a smell of diesel on the dipstick. If you have a Skyactiv-D and you have never smelled the dipstick, do that this week. Now, before we get to the top 8, do something for me. If you own any car with any engine on this list, type the number 1 in the comments. Just the number 1. I would like to see how many of us there are, because between the badges on this list, it is going to be a very large number of you. And if you have not subscribed yet, please do. It is free, it takes a second, and it is the only thing that keeps these videos being made. Number 8. The Ford 1L EcoBoost. Fiesta Focus EOS Sport Mondo. One of the most common engines in Britain, and one that genuinely deserved the praise it got when it launched. It won awards, and it drove far better than a 1L 3-cylinder had any right to. The problem is the belt. Rather than a chain or a belt on the outside of the engine where you can see it, this uses a belt that runs inside the engine submerged in oil. It is quieter, and it reduces friction, which helps the emissions figures. But over years, the belt degrades. It sheds material into the oil it is sitting in. That debris travels round with the oil and collects at the oil pump pickup, which is the strainer that draws oil up from the sump. Once that is blocked, the engine is no longer being lubricated, and an engine that was running perfectly on Monday is scrapped by Friday. The warning when it comes late. Change the belt at the interval the manufacturer now recommends rather than the one in the original handbook, because the guidance has been revised, and keep the oil changes short. There is one more thing worth knowing about this engine, and it applies to the one at number 4 as well. The people it hits hardest are not the ones doing big mileage. It is the opposite. A car that does a long run every week gets hot, stays hot, and the oil stays in good condition. A car that does 2 meters to the shops and 2 meters back never gets properly warm. The oil degrades faster, and the belt sits in it, degrading with it. So, the little Fiesta that has done 30,000 miles in 8 years, owned by somebody careful, garaged, never thrashed, is very often in worse shape than the one that has done 90,000 on the motorway. That is completely counterintuitive, and it is why so many owners are blindsided. They look at the mileage, they think they've been kind to it, and they've actually been doing the one thing that engine likes least. Number 7. The Mercedes OM651. The 2.1 diesel, C-Class, E-Class, Vito Sprinter. There are a very great many of these in Britain, and a lot of them are working vehicles doing serious mileage. 2 known weak points: the timing chain and the injectors. The injectors are the more common complaint. They can leak. They can seize in the head. And getting a seized injector out of a Mercedes diesel head is one of those jobs that starts at a couple of hours and occasionally ends with a cylinder head coming off. The chain is the more serious one. It stretches, and on this engine, the timing gear is not a simple job to get at. The tell for both is a diesel that has become noisier than it used to be, particularly a rattle or a tick that is worse from cold. And a rough idle that smooths out once it warms up is very often an injector rather than anything more sinister, but it needs looking at rather than living with. Number 6. The Volkswagen and Audi EA8. The 1.8 8 and 2L TSI, Golf, Pat, Tiguan, Audi A3, A4, A5, Q3, Q5, Seat, Leon, Cupra, Skoda, Octavia. From around 2013 onwards in this country, this is a genuinely good engine that has one persistent, well-documented flaw. It uses oil. British owners report topping up every 1,000 to 1,500 miles, which on a modern car is extraordinary. The causes are piston ring wear, the crankcase breather system failing, and internal pressure problems. Now, here is why it matters more than it sounds. If the oil level is low, everything downstream suffers. The turbo can fail. The timing chain wears faster because it is not being properly lubricated. So, a car that is quietly using oil is not just costing you oil, it is aging every expensive part inside it. Earlier versions of this engine also had the tensioner problem I mentioned earlier, where the chain could jump on a cold start. If you own one, check the oil every fortnight without fail. This is the single most preventable engine on this entire list. Number 5. The Jaguar Land Rover Ingenium. Built in Wolverhampton, fitted from 2015 onwards to the Jaguar XE, XF, E-Pace, and F-Pace, and to the Land Rover Discovery Sport, Evoque, Velar, and Defender. The 2L diesel version uses a timing chain, and a chain is supposed to be the durable option. On this one, a great many of them have not been. The chains stretch. The plastic guides they run against wear down and shed debris into the oil. The tensioners weaken, and once the chain has stretched far enough, the timing slips. The warning is a metallic rattle on cold start that clears after a few seconds. It usually shows somewhere between 60 and 80,000 miles, and short journeys make it worse because fuel dilutes the oil, and thin oil wears the chain faster. And here is the detail that makes owners angriest. The chains sit at the back of the engine. To reach them, the gearbox has to come out. I have made a full video on Jaguar and what has happened to that company, and this engine is part of it. It is linked above. Number 4. The PSA PureTech 1.2, Vauxhall, Peugeot, Citroën and DS Corsair, Crossland, Grandland, Astra 208, 308, C3, C4. Hundreds of thousands of them on British roads. This is the same problem as the Ford and arguably worse. A timing belt running inside the engine in the oil. As it ages, it sheds rubber. The debris blocks the oil pickup and the engine seizes. The failures were widespread enough to trigger legal action in France and to force the manufacturer to extend warranty cover on affected engines. And in later versions, the design was quietly abandoned in favor of a chain. Think about what that tells you. They changed it. Full engine replacement on a car of this type runs into thousands of pounds, which on a 5 or 6-year-old Corsair is more than the car is worth. There is a full video on this and what has happened to Vauxhall, and it is linked above as well. Number 3. The PSA and BMW Prince, the 1.6 THP and VTI. This is the joint venture engine, and it went into the Peugeot 207, 208, and 308, the Citroën C3 and C4, and most famously the Mini. Ask anybody who owned a second-generation Mini Cooper S about this engine and watch their face. Timing chain stretch, tensioner failure, carbon building up on the inlet valves because it is a direct injection engine and there is no fuel washing over them to keep them clean. High-pressure fuel pump failures, turbo failures. Owners have reported multiple chain tensioners fitted inside 18 months and top-end rebuilds after a tensioner let go and the valves met the pistons. On cars with 25,000 miles on them, the warning is a rattle on startup. And on this engine, you must not ignore it because the gap between the noise starting and the valves being bent can be very short indeed. The earlier engines from around 2006 to 2010 are the worst. Later versions improved. Number 2. The Land Rover 3-liter TDV6 and SDV6. Discovery 4. Range Rover Sport Range Rover. The big diesels in the big cars that a great many people in this country aspired to own, and they break their crankshafts. Not wear, break. The crankshaft is the single strongest component in an engine, the spine that everything else turns around. And on this engine, there have been enough failures for it to be a known and discussed problem in the trade, rather than bad luck. When it goes, there is no repair. There is no rebuild worth having. There is a replacement engine in a vehicle where a replacement engine is an enormous amount of money. The contributing factors reported are the usual ones: oil condition, service intervals, short journeys. But the honest summary is that this is a very heavy vehicle with a hard-working engine, and the bottom end of that engine has proved to be its limit. If you are shopping for a used Discovery 4 or a Range Rover Sport of this era, the service history is not a nice-to-have. It is the entire purchase decision, and there is a wider point here that applies to everything on this list. These are cars that cost 60, 70, 80,000 pounds when they were new. Today, you can buy one for 6 or 7. And every single week, somebody looks at that number, thinks they have found the bargain of their life, and buys a vehicle where a single failure costs more than they paid for the whole car. That is the trap. It is not that these are bad vehicles. A Discovery 4 is a genuinely superb thing, and there is nothing else quite like it. It is that the purchase price and the running costs have completely separated from one another. The person who bought it new could absorb an engine. The person buying it at 7,000 pounds very often cannot, and nobody tells them that before they hand over the money. So, if you are looking at one, work out what an engine costs before you work out what the car costs. If that number frightens you, walk away. If it does not, buy the best documented one you can find and enjoy it, because they are wonderful. And number 1, the BMW 47. If you know, you already knew. This is the most infamous engine failure in modern British motoring, and it is number 1 because of the sheer number of cars it went into and the sheer cost when it goes wrong. It is the 2L diesel fitted between roughly 2007 and 2014. The 1 Series, the 3 Series, the 5 Series, the X1 and X3, and several Minis. Now this engine has a timing chain, and BMW put that chain at the rear of the engine against the gearbox. Read that again, because everything follows from it. To inspect the chain, the gearbox comes out. To replace the chain, the gearbox comes out. There is no shortcut, and there is no cheap version of this job. The chains wore, the guides wore, and when the chain finally goes, the pistons meet the valves and the damage is total. Bent valves, blown pistons, scored bores, shattered rocker arms. In severe cases, the cylinder head is destroyed outright, and because the chain is at the back, the debris then circulates through the whole oil system and takes the bearings with it. One British specialist that rebuilds these says they have rebuilt over 3,000 damaged BMW engines. The warning is a rattle from the rear of the engine on cold start, which owners describe as sounding like marbles in a tin can. It is worst on a cold, damp morning, first start of the day. But here is the thing that makes this engine so feared. A great many owners report that theirs failed with no meaningful warning at all. And the final cruelty is the economics. On an 11 or 12-year-old 3 Series, the repair bill routinely exceeds what the car is worth, which means the car is not repaired. It is scrapped. A perfectly good body, perfectly good interior, perfectly good gearbox. Scrapped because of a chain that should have lasted the life of the engine. That is why it is number 1. And there is one more thing about the N47 that you will not hear anywhere else, and it matters if you are buying rather than selling. Because these engines are so well known, a whole industry has grown up around them. There are specialists in this country who do nothing else. And that means a used 3 Series with a documented chain replacement done properly with an invoice to prove it is arguably a safer buy than an equivalent car with a different engine and no history at all. The failure is known. The fix is known. The cost is known. What kills people is buying one that has not had it done from a seller who either does not know or is not saying. So, if you are looking at one of these, there are 3 questions. Has the timing chain been replaced? Who did it? And where is the invoice? If the answer to the first is no, you are not buying a car. You are buying a countdown. And you should price it that way because a very large number of the ones for sale right now are being sold by people who have heard the rattle and decided it is somebody else's problem. That sounds harsh. It is also exactly what is happening on forecourts and in classified adverts all over this country. Now I want to be fair because there is another side to this, and you deserve to hear it. Every single manufacturer on this list has fixed these problems. BMW replaced the N47 with the B47 and made real improvements. Better chain materials, stronger tensioners, better oil feed. The later Prince engines improved. The N20 went to metal guides. Pure went back to a chain. None of these companies set out to build a bad engine. They were solving an emissions problem under a deadline with technology that had not been proven over 15 years of real-world use because it could not have been. And plenty of these engines are absolutely fine. There are N47s out there with 200,000 miles on them on their original chain because they were serviced properly and driven properly. Which brings me to the only three things that actually matter. First, change the oil more often than the book says. Almost every failure on this list is made worse by long service intervals, and almost every one is delayed or prevented by short ones. Manufacturers set those intervals to make the car look cheap to run. You do not have to agree with them. Second, use the correct specification oil, not the cheapest on the shelf. On these engines, the oil is not a consumable, it is a component. Third, listen on a cold start, not when it is warm, not after a run, first thing in the morning with the radio off and the window down. Almost every engine on this list gives you the same warning in the same way. And almost every owner who lost an engine heard it and put it down to age. If you hear a rattle that clears after a few seconds, that is not the car getting old. That is the only notice you are going to get. So tell me in the comments, which of these have you owned? Did yours fail or is it still going? And how many miles has it done? Because I would like to know how many of these are out there quietly doing 300,000 miles without complaint, and how many have ended up on the back of a truck. Between all of us watching, we have owned every engine on this list. And your experience of them is worth more than anything a manufacturer will ever publish. And if you think this is bad, there is something else happening to British cars right now that almost nobody is talking about, and it is going to affect a great many more people than this. That is the next video.